Welcome to our Top 5 series for Ryerson's alumni and friends. My name is Christian Mehta and I am the AVP of Engagement at the university. Before we begin, I want to pay my respects to the Indigenous peoples, elders, and ancestors who stewarded and cared for the nature and people who lived on the land where Ryerson is located today. At the university, we have made a deep and long-lasting commitment to truth and reconciliation. And I invite you to learn more about this work online, and next time we can get together on campus, which I hope will be very, very, very soon. We know you've got a lot on the go, so this is a 30-minute webinar. We're gonna dive in quickly, but before I introduce Justin Poi and Tony DeMello to you, I have a few quick housekeeping tips to share. In about 20 minutes, Justin and Tony will be taking your questions. If you want to ask something, please add your question to Zoom's Q&A area. It should be at the bottom of your screen. Your cameras and mics are turned off, so I'll be selecting questions from that area. Second, if you're on social media, please use hashtag #RUTop5. And finally, we are recording this session, so if you want to rewatch it or share it with your networks, friends, colleagues, family, please look for a message from us in your inbox over the next day or two. Now, I'm delighted to introduce Justin and Tony to you. Justin Poi is an award-winning advertising executive who has built his career on personal life around the understanding and promotion of diverse communities. As a director on the Sick Kids Foundation board, he brings a unique perspective on how to raise funds and create awareness in the Chinese Canadian community. Justin did similar work with his time on the board of the Walrus magazine. He is the recipient of the Queen's Golden and Diamond Jubilee Medals and the Chinese Canadian Legend Award. Justin is the honorary patron of Asian Heritage Month, which is this month, by the way, and a founding chair of the Mayor's Lunar Gala in Vaughan for Mackenzie Health Foundation. He's a Ryerson University Alumni of Distinction Award recipient and has received the U of T Arbor Award as well. Welcome, Justin.
Great, thank you very much, Christian.
Yes, after Justin's presentation, we'll hear from Tony DeMello. Tony has a background in finance, management consulting, and law, and has spent much of her career focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the private, not-for-profit, and government sectors. She is a human rights lawyer and a certified coach and mediator. Tony has worked in higher education for the last 25 years and is the Director of Human Rights at Ryerson, where she manages all investigations related to discrimination and harassment. Tony's team leads human rights education and training for students, faculty, and staff on campus as well. Human Rights Services also advises Ryerson's executives by providing coaching, alternate resolution, and consultation. Listen, I want to thank you both for being with us today. Justin, I'm going to invite you to open this presentation for the next few minutes, and then we'll hand it over to Tony. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Christian. Welcome, everybody. And first of all, happy Asian Heritage Month. It's very timely that we're doing this right during Asian Heritage Month. Unfortunately, we haven't really been able to celebrate Asian Heritage Month the way we normally do, but this is a perfect opportunity to bring attention to some of the issues like what we're talking about today, which is anti-Asian racism, and what is happening specifically now that has sort of boiled to the surface as a result of this pandemic. I tend to look at everything from the lens of a marketer and advertising person, because that's been my whole career. And whenever we look at a campaign or anything that we want to accomplish, we always have to look at a little bit of the past and understand what the issue is. The Chinese community, and I've been very involved with the Chinese Canadian community for at least the last 25 years, has never really been known to be active in the sense of community activism for things like racism and issues like that. When you get the Chinese community together to build something, you know, if they're determined to build a nursing home, they're determined to build a museum, they will get it done in record time. But historically, the Chinese have never really taken on the issue of racism as a cohesive group. If we look historically, and you go back to the golden age of television, you know, many people are familiar with Bruce Lee's challenges when he first started out in media. We look at even the challenges today. If you look at what's happening in the United States with Asian Americans, how they aren't being casted or how they are being casted. I mean, Marvel is supposed to debut their first Chinese superhero, Shang Li, played by Simu Liu, who's a Canadian CBC actor from Kim's Convenience Store. I mean, you look at what's happening right now. Will there be an audience for a purely Chinese-themed Marvel movie? I don't know. There's a lot of things that are happening, like in real time right now, that that we don't really understand which direction we're going in just yet. You know, the Chinese have never really coagulated as a group to create these movements. You know, a lot of people say it's because historically they've never been very politically motivated. If you look in Canada, they have an extremely low voter turnout. And if you look at it, Chinese from Hong Kong, they were from a British colony. Every few years, Britain would send a governor, and that was it. And you never voted, and, you know, they kept the taxes low. Everybody's happy. Nobody cared to, you know, protest or anything like that. Then in mainland China, you don't have much of a vote anyway. So everybody has basically said, what are the rules? I'm going to stick by the rules, and I'm going to basically succeed within the rules. And if you look globally, wherever Chinese tend to go, they sort of arrive at their new country, they absorb the rules of engagement, they accept them, and then they work within them, and they tend to prosper. Every city, every major city around the world, you will find a Chinatown. And it's very unique from other cultures that set up their own neighborhoods and whatnot. Chinatowns are extremely insular. You find that people arrive at this new country, they find out, you know, what are the taxes, what am I allowed to do, what am I not allowed to do, and then they just put their head down and they do it. And so this, when you see that there's this type of behavior, it becomes actually quite difficult to rally a group together to actually accomplish something. It's been tried many, many times. Now, if you look, for example, anytime we've had a disaster in China, for example, because all Chinese sort of see mainland China as their original motherland, no matter what part of the world they come from, whether they're Caribbean Chinese, whether they're from India, you know, South America, they all look at China as being the motherland. When there has been earthquakes and floods, you will see Chinese from every subgroup coagulate and raise money, and they do it in record speed. But if you try to figure out one cause that all Chinese can agree on and sort of mount a campaign that would push back against Chinese racism, it becomes extremely difficult. You know, we very often look at different ethnic groups that have had, you know, the same type of racism against them, like the Jewish community, for example. The Jewish community, no matter where you go around the globe, they have found a singular message and a singular event that they all rally around, and they have a very, very strong message, and they're able to all work on that, and they do very, very well. If you go to any Chinese group, whether you go to the Taiwanese Chinese, the Chinese from Singapore, the Chinese from China, they all have their own specific issues, their own wants and needs, and it becomes extremely confusing. And I think that has been one of our challenges, is how do we get this entire group to agree on one thing? You know, the overseas Chinese have always been known to be extremely successful and industrious people. And if you visit southern China, in the Guangdong province, there's a museum there actually that shows you how far around the world all those nomadic Chinese have gone. They've gone pretty much everywhere around the world. And a lot of them are the Hakka Chinese from the south. And the Hakka Chinese are very, very proud. We have a very large conference right here in Toronto called the Hakka Conference. It's held at York University, and it's massive. And Hakka Chinese from all over North America fly to get there. They all talk about Hakka Chinese issues. but they're not the same issues that somebody from the north of China, in Tianjin or Beijing or in Western China might have. And so it's very difficult when we are faced with things like anti-Chinese racism. It's very difficult to come to this one cohesive group. The other thing that we've noticed is that and this is, again, from me dissecting this as a marketer. I don't want to sound cold about it, but quite frankly, I've done enough campaigns for charities and whatnot to know that in order to be successful in a campaign, you also must be able to pull on heartstrings. And there is not much sympathy garnered for the Chinese. Now, if you were to look at some historical events, like tremendously tragic events that have happened to the Chinese, whether it's the so-called rape of Nanjing that happened during World War II, to anything, you know, all the dynastic feuds in China, to even things that are more recent, you'll find that there's been great suffering, but nobody seems to all coagulate again around one experience. And this actually plays a huge role in preventing the Chinese from coming together and mounting a successful campaign. You will not find these kind of activist groups in the Chinese level, in the Chinese community. On the micro level, you will find them. If you were to say, you know, I want to join a group that wants to fight what's going on right now, you know, that has bubbled up to the surface because of this pandemic, well, you will find micro groups. But the problem is these little groups are having a lot of trouble coagulating into a larger group that can have some sort of effect. I don't know why that, you know, racism against the Chinese has been different. I would say that some of it is also how Chinese have been portrayed, especially in recent years. A lot of Chinese that come from China, let's face it, to get into this country, you have to have money. The bulk of the Chinese that are in China, we will never see here in Canada because they just don't have the means or the requirement needed to immigrate to another country. So they come here with sometimes, you know, vast amounts of money. They are, you know, everybody sort of perceives them to be wealthy. The negative aspects of that is you've taken all the good spots in universities, especially in the science and engineering programs. You've driven up our real estate prices. How can I feel sorry for somebody who's got like 4 Lamborghinis in the driveway? It actually, that image that the Chinese have created for themselves has actually played against their efforts to garner any sort of empathy for what they are going through.
We have about one more minute, yeah, and then we have to hand it over.
No problem. No problem. So what has happened right now is things have completely boiled up to the surface. There's a resentment and an anger that has taken place in Canada and in the United States against Chinese. COVID-19, and the mere fact that it may turn out that it didn't spread to North America directly from China, is just a really easy scapegoat. But it's not, I mean, we know it's not factual. But I think that before we can sort of say, and obviously we're not going to solve this issue in any short period of time, but anybody who wants to mount a campaign to fight this needs to first look at exactly where we are today and why we are there today, and why would something like a pandemic all of a sudden make something with so much anger boil up to the surface. So I think that we need to take a look at ourselves and do some dissection about our own community before we can actually move ahead and mount some kind of fight against this.
That's great, Justin. And in fact, there are some questions in the Q&A already that we'll have to tackle then around that very issue. Thank you so much. Tony, what do you have to say?
So I'm going to speak to this from my perspective as the Director of Human Rights and what we're seeing. I thought it would be helpful. Not everybody's on the same page in terms of their understanding of the issue. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about what the problem is and how it's manifesting. And so Justin's given us some background around how it particularly affects the Chinese community, which I think is so important. And then I'm going to talk about what are the results of this anti-Asian discrimination. And then finally, a lot of folks are asking me, okay, I have a sense of it. What can I do? I want to do something. My guess is many of you are on this Zoom meeting because you want to do something to positively help what's going on. So the first I'll say is, you know, and Justin's talked about this that this is historic. So I think COVID has unveiled and amplified anti-Chinese racism specifically that has been present for a very long time in Canada, and we need to start there. So I say anti-Chinese because we often say anti-Asian, but Asia is a huge continent. My mother is from Asia, she's from India. And what's happening right now, what we're seeing is anti-Chinese racism. What's happening also is because I think there's so much segregation that we don't like to admit, many people can't tell the difference between somebody who's Chinese or from Hong Kong, from Thailand. There was violence against somebody from Singapore. And so all of a sudden it becomes, because of there's some anti-Chinese racism, it affects a much, much broader population. And it's not new. And so I can give tons of examples historically, everything from the Chinese head tax to different ways in which, you know, areas have been zoned to exclude Chinese. But to give everyday examples that I think many people on this meeting will have experienced, you know, it drives me up the wall when people will say things like, oh, that's cheap, it's made from China. And I say, do you know your iPad's made from China? You know, my iPhone's made for China. You know, the Volkswagen Passat, Adidas shoes, Burberry bags. Like there's a ton of things of extremely high quality that are made from China. And in fact, we are benefiting from products that exploit lower labor prices in China and then saying Chinese people are making lesser goods. And so I think that's something we need to think about, the ways in which we already have these subtle forms of racism against Chinese folks. Many of the things I've been seeing in the Chinese community as folks are talking about this is, you know, comments around things, Chinese folks being more likely to be diseased, this association with Chinese people and being lesser or dirty, these kinds of myths that have been propagated in our media. And I can tell you, I had an experience where I got to study in China when I was in law school. And I couldn't believe, as somebody who had a ton of friends and acquaintances from the Chinese Canadian community, how many racist stereotypes I had embedded in my mind and from my life that I had seen in Canada that were dispelled when I actually lived there for a little while. So it's something that I think we need to think about because it has been amplified, but it has existed for a very long time. And a really small example I want to use that I think is very telling is, you know, when Wuhan had experienced, you know, over 80,000 people that were suffering from the virus, we saw very little reaction. And then when it hit Italy, there was this overwhelming reaction. But what I noticed living near Chinatown is nobody was going to any restaurant in Chinatown. It was vacant, which I have never seen. And yet I went to an Italian restaurant that weekend and it was packed. So I also need us to think about the ways in which we blame certain communities when there's crisis and ways in which we looked at Italians and felt sorry for them, felt sad, felt empathy, felt an alliance, and what that's about. The way it's manifesting is something we need to talk about. So we have everything from seeing a massive increase in physical attacks, verbal attacks, people being spit on from the Asian Chinese community, from Northeast Asian communities. We saw a raising in 1 month of 100 more hate crimes, specifically against Chinese Canadians in that community. We see everything from a president of the United States calling it the Chinese virus, to somebody who's considered a legendary, beloved rock star, Bryan Adams, writing a tweet that was so disgusting and blaming of Chinese people, and also caricaturizing them as dirty, as cheap, as all these things that I think lead to this kind of violence that we need to talk about. In general, what I'm also seeing is a general sense of anxiety. I'm hearing about it from staff, faculty, and students who talk about an excitement about returning to university, but a fear of taking public transit. People afraid for their parents who are going out on daily walks that they'll be hurt. And there's so much misinformation. You know, one of the things that happened early on was all of the images of COVID had folks that were Chinese Canadian or Chinese American wearing masks. And there was this idea that they were already infected and there were threats and people were saying they were being avoided on the streets. In fact, actually, people were wearing the masks, we learned, because it's a way for you to protect other people. It's a way to stop transmission. If you are asymptomatic, but you're caring, it's a way to care for others. So it was actually this beautiful act of solidarity from Chinese Canadians, and yet it was seen in a way that was about being menaced. So I'll leave you, because I want to make sure we're open for questions with what you can do. I get asked this a lot. So the first thing I would say is we need to increase our awareness of how we speak, how we think, how we talk about Chinese Canadians. Do we see them as Canadians, or do we forever see them as outsiders and immigrants? Do we see them among us and how we talk about them? When you hear family and friends saying things that are racist, that are harmful, in a way that you can do where you don't feel that you're going to put yourself at risk, if you can have a conversation with that person about the harm that that might cause, and about things you might have just learned about the mask that you can share that will change the way in which we're seeing the situation and make things safer and more thoughtful for our Chinese Canadian friends and Asian Canadian friends. Check in on your friends. And that's not to say, just going up to random people and saying, I know you're from this community, what are you experiencing? But check in on your friends just to see how they're doing, how they're experiencing this outbreak and understanding that better. And if you don't have any friends from that community, make some, whether it's online or otherwise. The more we can know each other, the better it is. And I'll leave you by saying the one thing that I think that this crisis, I hope, has taught us is that we are all deeply connected. And what happens to our neighbor affects us because it will directly impact us and because the lives of our neighbor also matter. So I'll give you that.
Wow, Tony, thank you so much. It looks like Justin's trying to log back on. But in the meantime, there are a few questions here for you, some that were pre-submitted as well. So where to begin? Let's start off with this one. This one is from Marcia. I was born in Jamaica and we have a robust Chinese culture there. My own family has several interracial marriages with Chinese. I'm distraught by this anti-Chinese racism. What can I do in my community to promote positive relationships with Chinese Canadians?
So I would say call it out. So when it's somebody I'm very close to, I can tell you I love my family, but my entire family is on a WhatsApp group, and there are things sometimes that will upset somebody on the family, and we call it out. And so where that's safe for you, if you can have a private conversation with somebody, naming these things, talking about the fact that we are connected, I find often I use myself. So when I talked about the fact that I show up in China as somebody who has, a deep connection to the Chinese community, and I realize I have all these racist ideas that have been embedded in me, if we can talk about ourselves and mistakes that we've made, but also help people to understand that there are real consequences to these kind of flippant comments. Like when I read what Brian Adams posted, I wasn't just disturbed that he thought it. I was disturbed that he didn't think it was a problem to post it. I was disturbed that when he apologized, he still didn't delete it. And that you're okay with that being put out there when you know that it is going to cause such severe harm. So thinking about ways in a loving way, in a supportive way, where you might make sure you take care of yourself, that you can challenge these things, I think we have to. I know it's hard, but we need to start speaking up.
Tony, a question's come in about the racism that's incited by politicians and some of the stuff we see on the media. Do you have any recommendations on how to suss out that stuff, particularly fake news? And also, how do we tune out that noise and really focus on justice over sensationalism?
That's a really important question. So I'm going to take this platform to say something I always say about this. Before you worry about fake news, please vote. We keep talking about politicians that don't represent us. We keep talking about politicians that represent things we're ashamed to tell our kids are leading some of our nation's provinces or territories, right? What we need to do is vote to make sure we have people that represent what is our community and speaks in a way that inspires people to think of us as one community instead of divisively and resulting in more hate. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is to actually read the sources. So if you don't know what a source is, just posting it without reading it is something to be careful of. I've done that. So I will tell you, as somebody who reads the news very carefully and very thoughtful, I think, about what I post on Facebook, I've had friends say to me, you posted something that actually is misleading. And so apologizing when you do that. I've also found that a lot of people are reposting stuff based on the headline and they don't actually read the article. And then later when they're told what that article actually says, they're surprised. And so read the sources as best as you can. You can look, there's some sites, I think Snopes is one of them, where you can kind of suss out fake news. We're seeing this more and more, but also having discussions with people, not just posting and walking away, right? This is a time where we can talk to people. We're having a million Zoom calls, right? We might be distancing with a couple of neighbors. These are times to bring these things up and hear other people's perspectives, and I think that helps. But more, I often say to people, the more we know people from different communities, the less likely we are to believe fake news. So if I can give an example, a friend of mine in one of my classes said something that really moved me. She said, whenever I don't know about a topic and I read a newspaper, I think that the newspaper has informed me and now I get it. And whenever I know about a topic and I read an article, I'm incensed at how misrepresented the things were. So asking ourselves why we think because I read one article, I'm an expert on something, right? Questioning that I think is important.
That's great. Justin, are you back? I see you're on, but if you can unmute yourself, I have a question for you.
I am back. I think
Okay.
that, yes. Okay, I apologize, everybody. I just got booted out, but yes.
Okay, good stuff. So here's a question from Mark. Has there been a shift in civic engagement with younger generations of Chinese, Justin? And can this younger cohort be tapped to help engage perhaps older generations? What's your take on that?
Well, I think that we're seeing a difference in the younger generation, but that's more because they have become westernized and they've become more used to Western ways. So a very good example would be social services, for example. The United Way years ago said, you know what, we don't really try too hard to go after the Chinese community, because when there's problems in the Chinese community, they don't seek out social services. They don't come, they won't if there's a drug problem or something like that, or depression. But we're seeing that with the younger generation, they are. So they're more open to what's happening in Western culture. So when we see things like protests, listen, what is happening in Hong Kong? That would have never, ever occurred. I mean, these youth are completely a different mindset from the youth that we saw. Now, back in, mind you, back in the late 80s, we did see, a big protest in China. However, that had taken so long to boil up. This was a knee-jerk reaction. The moment they saw and felt like they were not being treated justly, that they were not getting what they were promised, they started to mount protests. And I think that really is a sign of the times. And so, yes, the community is changing. Yeah.
Another one for you, Justin. Since you've been involved in so many charitable organizations that focus on the Chinese community locally, how do you predict, or what do you anticipate as it relates to charitable giving or volunteering in these organizations, maybe post-COVID?
Oh, that's interesting. So right now, I'm going to split it into two compartments. One is, if we look at charities as a whole, I think that charities, if they were specifically working with the Chinese community to raise funds, say universities, hospitals, and whatnot, I think they can absolutely continue. And I think it is their responsibility to continue the dialogue with the Chinese community, because they need to show, look, we are not affected by this. Our perception of the community has not changed whatsoever. When we look at Chinese-based charities, the ones that actually desperately need money, you're looking at the big guys like Yi Hong Foundation and Mansheng Foundation. I mean, they have been hit. Mansheng has been hit badly by COVID. I have not heard what the perception is. A lot of nursing homes in Ontario were also hit, so they were not singled out. I think it would have been much worse if only the Chinese nursing homes had been, affected by COVID-19. But I think that it's definitely going to affect how they raise funds. Yes.
Okay, we have time maybe for two more questions. This one is for Tony. Tony, in thinking about the future of anti-racism work in Canada as it relates to the pandemic, how do you think Canadians can mobilize, or people here can mobilize, and continue the fight towards justice, despite what may appear to be, or what sounds like is, a setback?
Whew, that's a very short question.
You've got 30 seconds, Tony. 30 seconds.
No problem. No, not my first rodeo. I would say that I'm hoping that there is an awakening of compassion that comes from this. If for what has been for us a major convenience, I won't say it was a minor inconvenience. It's been major for many of us. To see what this feels like to worry about your job, to see what it feels like to be uncertain if there will be food in the grocery store. We had a few weeks where there was some stuff that just wasn't there. People were worried. To worry about your children and families' mental health when they're staying indoors. To think about how many communities in Toronto and Canada today don't have access to the outdoors, don't have backyards, are living in tall buildings without a lot of green space, and how much privilege we've had in this major moment of inconvenience. I hope that there's an awakening of compassion that makes us understand that it has been very uneven to watch the consequences of COVID-19, but it was uneven before. There were people that were barely making it before. And one of the articles I've read by The Guardian that really moved me was, now we're talking about how all the delivery people and grocery store workers and farmers are essential workers. And it said, we're not essential workers, we're sacrificial workers, right? You don't see us as essential. You see us as you need to get fast food delivered to your house. And we're sacrificial because our lives depend on this income. And so my hope is that we tip a lot right now when people deliver to us, that we are extremely kind to the people in grocery stores that are trying to feed their families and making very difficult wages still. And that when we come out of this, we think of our neighborhoods differently. And we hope that there's more freedom, not just for us, as we can walk outside, go to a park, meet people, hug them, but that we want that for others in our community.
Justin, anything to add to that in terms of a compassion or kindness point of view that we need to really
well
into?
I think regardless of look, everybody, it's human nature to always want to figure out what the cause of the problem is and then sort of point blame at that cause. We're seeing that even in American politics. We're seeing that with individuals here. You want to say, okay, well, that was the cause of the problem, and now I'm going to direct all my anger and hate towards that because it doesn't sit well with me that we're to just be sort of very warm and fuzzy, and we're all in this together, and let's not blame anybody, because for some reason that's not human nature. But this is a very unique situation. Like we may never experience this again in our lives, and most of our parents have never experienced this either. So I would say that why don't we take this opportunity and do something that maybe we have never actually done once in our lives, and that is not to go to the go-to playbook of let's find something to blame the heck out of it, even if we kind of know it's not true, and just find a scapegoat so we can feel better about ourselves. Why did I lose my job? Why, did I blow all my savings in the last 4 weeks? I think that would be something really novel if we could all just agree that because this is a once in a lifetime thing, why don't we try and do a once in a lifetime thing?
That's a really powerful statement and call to action. So I want to end on that. And I want to thank you, Tony and Justin, for being here with all of us on this very important, very important conversation. You've opened up a lot of new thoughts and ideas that I hope we'll be able to use and start to see the world a little bit differently in our communities. I want to thank you both for your expertise and your time. And maybe we'll do this again, because half an hour isn't enough on this topic, as we know. In fact, we should probably create an entire conference around this or gathering. And to all of you who've tuned in, I want to thank you for your time and for your engagement in our webinars, as well as this topic in particular. It's so important, and I'm glad that to see so many of our alumni and friends and Ryersonians come together and to share. We will be sending this webinar out, a recording of this tomorrow, so please stay tuned, rewatch it, share it. There are a lot more questions in the Q&A. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to them, but hopefully in a subsequent session we will. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tony and Justin. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye for now.